On episode 314 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Fred Bartlett and discuss his book, Strong Path. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/314. Now, Fred is an attorney, and don't hold that against him. Actually, my father's an attorney, but Fred went to West Point. He's Army Ranger, so really cool dude, from a military background. But what he noticed was, as he got a little older, like a lot of us, he kind of got a little out of shape. And he had met someone when he was 50, about 50. And she's like, look, if you're going to date me, I want you to be in shape. I want you to start lifting weights and doing stuff. And so fortunately, he followed her advice because she's a pretty cool girl. And he went out and started lifting weights and he started taking care of himself. And now he does what he calls the strong path. And what he noticed was all of his friends, and a lot of them were also, in the military, Army Rangers, that kind of thing, they were declining. They weren't skiing as much, they weren't doing as much, and they were actually getting very old very quickly, whereas he felt like he was getting younger because of the path he chose. And so he is now a staunch advocate of exercise to make sure that your body stays strong and resilient, to keep your muscle mass, and to basically, stay younger. So the book is Choosing the Strong Path, and his name is Fred Bartlett. So with no further ado, here's Fred Bartlett. So Fred, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
As I got your book, Strong Path, or Choosing the Strong Path, I got into it, and you told a little bit about your story. And what I want folks to know is you're 85 years old and probably more fit than most 50-year-olds walking around. And a big reason that happened was you happened to meet your wife, Jana, 30 years ago, and she kind of chided you along the way to not only choosing the strong path, but actually now being a hero, or, being someone that's pushing out to others the need for them to choose this. And so I want to commend her first, because I don't think this book would have happened, and I don't think you'd be where you were if it weren't for a strong woman in your background. But you did the work, and you got to where you are. So I was really excited about your story and what the message that you have in this book.
Well, it's interesting. She also was the one, when I got to be about 60 or 70, maybe 62 or 3 in the 90s, my buddies were all falling by the wayside. They weren't working out anymore. They weren't skiing. They made excuses. And I got to wondering why in the world I enjoyed doing all this stuff and was getting better at it. And my buddies, who were all at the cream of the crop, and the Ranger School and all that stuff, why they were falling by the wayside. And I started doing research on Medline. And I realized that the world was just beginning to see that it's not about being skinny. It's not about simply cardio. It's all about being strong. And this was new stuff back then, but it got me interested in it. And I for 10 years, I researched it, and I began to see more and more. The top people were beginning to talk about strength and not about being, skinny and having good cardio. Now, you got to have good cardio. We know that, but there's, you do both.
Yeah. And it was a study. It was funny because when I first started out the podcast and I was looking for material to talk about, because I did a lot of solo shows back then, one of the studies I came across was a study that correlated grip strength with longevity and found a positive correlation with the measurement of grip strength and when someone was eventually then going to pass on. And just thought that was kind of interesting. But realizing now, as I've done a lot of training myself over the years, is that grip strength is really just something that you develop because you're developing strength throughout your body, and your body needs the grip strength to be able to do the things that you're doing. So, strength is such an important part of it. And
it's. I mean to interrupt, but on this point, when you're 60, your mode is 90. That means if you're 60, the most likely course is you'll live to be 90. That's 30 years. And that's half of your adult life. And most people don't understand that there is, by the way, in my book, everything I talk about is peer-reviewed medical research. This is not some, trial lawyer, U.S. Army Ranger making stuff up. But the fact is that over that second half of your life, the thing that is most correlated with happiness, health, success, everything is pure D strength.
And I agree with that. And I guess one of the core reasons, and it's a technical term that a lot of folks might not know. They should if they listen to this podcast, because I do talk about sarcopenia quite a bit. But could you kind of get into sarcopenia? Give us kind of a brief of what it is and why it's so insidious.
Yeah, sarcopenia, everybody is affected by it beginning at around age 30. You begin losing strength. Nobody's immune, everybody's affected. And as you get to be 50, it increases, you lose strength quicker. As you get to be into your 60s, it happens quicker. We get frail. It's called the downward spiral of aging. And you all remember, Aunt Nan was 91 or 82 and broke her hip and never walked again. And it's even worse today. And the result of sarcopenia untreated, that means not working out. One of the top medical scientists in America today has written a long study, which is available, and I think I got it on my website, but I can put it there. This guy has concluded that aging is so terrible because of frailty and sarcopenia that everybody should die at 75, because after 75, life isn't worth living. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
This guy is a smart guy. He's not a dope.
Well, no, and I think if you look at the math of it, you start around the early to mid 30s, and most people at that point are going to lose a little less than 1%. So they're going to lose 3 to 6 pounds in the next decade of muscle mass, which doesn't seem like a lot,
Yeah.
but a lot of us at that same point in time are also putting on 10, 15 pounds of body fat. So we get to our 40s, and now we're not looking the way we want to look, and maybe we don't feel comfortable working out. Other people are going to judge us, and so we've kind of got this mental complex about it. But over the course of the next decade, we're going to lose over 10 pounds of muscle mass, and by the time we get into our 70s, that decline is such a huge, significant decline as a percentage of body weight that we're just going to get frail. And the earlier we start on a lifting program, the sooner we can kind of slow that progression, or in fact, some cases reverse that progression or degression, I guess, for lack of a better word, in that spiral, because we're actually taking the time to do positive things to build and maintain muscle.
Alan, of course, you're dead bang right. The earlier you start, the better. But Harvard and the UK colleges of medicine make clear over and over again, it's never too late. The UK colleges say exercise is a miracle cure for sarcopenia. Harvard said it's an antidote to disability and chronic illnesses, and your chances of getting heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, stroke, all of those chronic diseases that kill us are reduced from 20 to 80% if you work out, pump iron hard. And when I say hard, sadly, I'm talking about a good part of your workout, I think, needs to be to, what we call failure.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I think a lot of people really don't relate to strength, but it is actually a big proponent of that, is that, invariably they'll know someone if they've lived into their 60s and 70s, they go through a fall. And I was looking at the statistics you had in the book, and it talked about, I think it was 2.6% of the people in a fall over 65 end up being hospitalized. And a large percentage of those that end up hospitalized never leave the hospital.
Yeah, there's new data since my book was published. I just got it from the CDC getting ready to talk to you. Falls are now the number one cause of injuries and deaths among older Americans. In 2014, older Americans had 29 million falls with 7 million injuries, costing Medicare over $30 billion. 1 in 4 people over 65 falls every year. And when they fall once, then they tend to fall again because they get a little scared. They are more careful. They get less exercise. They get weaker, and they fall again.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is, this is not only a tragedy for individuals, but our Medicare system is in deep trouble. With 10,000 people turning 65 each day, the CDC says the number of fall-related injuries and death is going to surge, resulting in serious cost increases unless we do something about it. That's one of the things that got me interested in this book. Our medical system's in terrible trouble, and nobody gets it. Nobody gets it.
Yeah, I think they're focused on the wrong things, and I guess the thing that's hard for me with this is completely preventable. But It was only recently, and I think you said in the book it was 2016 that the CDC even classified sarcopenia as a disease.
Yeah, two things happened very recently. When I started reading this stuff in the 90s, a couple of people, Dr. Fielding at Tufts, used the word sarcopenia, but in the literature it was unheard of. And everybody just thought, I've lectured to a lot of surgeons and medical people. And I asked them, who's heard of sarcopenia? Alan, still today, no hands go up. And when I say, how many people think frailty with aging is inevitable, all the hands go up. It's always been considered, this is just what happens when you get old. Now, in October 2016, the AMA called sarcopenia a disease with all the trappings of a disease for the first time. Now, listen to this. Last spring, the United States government, I went to the conference, picked sarcopenia as one of the 3 or 4 most serious diseases because it affects the largest number of people and ruins the most number of lives. Think of that.
Yeah.
And I bet most of your listeners never heard of it.
Yeah, I think if you ask someone what osteoporosis or osteopenia is, most doctors would actually know that because they diagnose it and they say, okay, well, you need a supplement or you can take this pill that's going to help for bone density. Although strength training actually is probably the best thing you can do for strengthening the bones and getting denser bones because it does both.
Right.
It helps the muscular system and it also helps your skeletal system become more resilient. And as a result, the weightlifting and the strength training makes you, one, less likely to fall. And then two, when you do fall, you're in a better condition to withstand that fall and not hurt yourself. So I think, it's really interesting to me that it's just now kind of becoming something people are talking about. And maybe it's just because there's a lot more people who have been sedentary and now over 65, because the generations before us, there weren't as many sedentary people that were then getting over 65. We've got more from the baby boomer generation. We've got more people turning 65. And because they've been sedentary and they've been able to be sedentary for much of their lives or most of their lives, now we're seeing it in increasing numbers, but it's a preventable disease, which is kind of the hard thing to take.
Another reason why it's becoming so pervasive is that in the last 20 or 30 years, life expectancies have gotten longer. So because people become disabled or affected by sarcopenia roughly around the same time they always did, instead of having 2 or 3 years of disability, they've got 15 or 20 years of disability, walking with a walker, unable to do all the things they love to do, their world closing in on them, being unhappy and basically being scared.
Yeah. And it is sad, but you talk about this in the book is that, we're not talking about lengthening your life. We're talking about adding quality to your life.
My son told me, we were skiing a couple of weeks ago, and he said, Dad, you're a stronger, better, faster skier at 85, turning 86 than when you were 40. And he said that he'd run into a guy who said there's 2 ways of getting old. One way is called live dying. The other way is called die living. In other words, you're not going to live a lot longer, but if you die while you're still living, you're still doing all the things you loved, and it's not a long, slow deterioration. Just the time comes when it's your time. But to have the last half of your adult life be better than when I was, 22, I was a U.S. Army Ranger. I thought I was hot stuff. I wasn't. I'm a better man now. So I got basically 25, another half of my life given me as a gift. And I just want, my whole deal here is to spread the word.
Yeah. Well, Ranger School really didn't do a lot for building muscle. I've seen plenty of guys coming out of Ranger School, and I'm like, ooh, they look like, war camp, they look like they've been a prisoner of war. But
when I started Ranger School, I weighed 210. I just graduated from West Point. And when I graduated, 5 months later, I weighed 165.
Yeah. But that was training for a specific purpose to have you doing a particular thing,
right.
and very important in and of itself. And you were a young man
So you did have opportunity after that. Unfortunately, a lot of us we don't, and over time we find ourselves kind of not in the position we want to be. So now someone wants to come and they want to start working out, and it can be a little intimidating. Talk about some of the basic movements that you would have someone go through if they came in and said, okay, I want to start weight training. What are the movements that you think would be most important for them to build strength in?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm an engineer and a lawyer. So what I've got on my website, strongpath.com, Harvard has a 55-page report, and they've got in there all kinds of photographs. If you don't know how to get started, start with this. When you begin feeling this way, then switch to that. Okay, so if you don't know what to do, that's a good thing to look at. However, I'm a big believer in the gym being the place to learn. Get a trainer. The government now pays for your gym memberships if you're over 65 through the Silver Sneakers program. There are classes for people getting started. You get a decent trainer, in most parts of the country, $25 an hour. Maybe get a buddy and you share it. You'll never spend better money in your life than getting started right, because I've studied your stuff and you're a believer like I am. I don't do ballistic stuff. I always try to immobilize everything except the muscle I'm using. Do curls on a slanted bench so I can't jerk the thing at all. But my routine, if you're reasonably athletic and everything, is the basic traditional thing. One day chest back, one day legs, one day arms and shoulders. By chest back, I do leg presses, lunges. I think lunges are great. I do stiff-legged deadlifts, holding a couple of 70-pound dumbbells using wrist grip straps, of course. I do calves. When you get older, legs are really important. Chest and back, I do inclines, declines, and flat presses. And back, I do pull-downs. I don't do them behind the neck. I do them in front, sit it up, seated, and then I do lay all the way back. Arms and shoulders, all kinds of shoulder presses. I do single arm stuff with dumbbells, shoulder presses, curls, 3 different kinds of back of your arm type stuff to get rid of mommy arms, all that kind of stuff. I do 15, 15, 10, 8, 5. We've got slow twitch muscles and fast twitch muscles. The slow twitch are endurance. So I do 2 sets of 15 with weights I could do 17. Then I do a set of 10 where I could not do 11. I've gone to failure. Pus is coming out of my ears. Jokingly. I do 8 where I couldn't do 9, and I do 5 where I couldn't do 4. So I've got the fast twitch and the slow twitch, and I've been on this for about 3 years, and people look at me and they say, you've lost weight. I really gained weight.
Yeah.
Because I've got more muscle.
Yeah, and I think some core things that you got into there that I do want to get into is, you're doing a pretty comprehensive program. You're working all different ranges of motion. I mean, all different directions of muscle. You're making sure to get full workout. You're stressing yourself, and you have a strategy. You have a method to what you're doing. You're not just walking into the gym and saying, "Ooh, I like that machine," and getting on it, and then just looking for something else that excites you. You have a plan when you go in the gym, and as a result of having a plan and having an intensity to it, you're not in the gym all day long. You're going in and getting your workout done. Probably, I'm imagining that was an hour to 45 minutes, maybe, and then you're out, and you're doing this maybe three, 4 times a week.
It's probably an hour and 20 minutes, and then sometime later in the day, I'll do cardio stuff, but I'll do intervals instead of long, slow running, sprint real hard for 60 yards, check my pulse, it'll be 160, walk until it's 90, then sprint like crazy. Do those for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, a good cardio workout. Cycling your heart rate is better for your heart than keeping it at a steady rate for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked about HIIT training on this podcast a lot, so I'm sure we all know a little bit about that. But the other thing you said, and I noticed this in a lot of the case studies that you went into in the book, was that the folks didn't just go at it blind either. They went ahead and got a trainer, particularly in the front end, to help them understand the form of the movement and to kind of push them along at the beginning to get them comfortable with their situation.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that. A firm believer. Now you got to get the right trainer. So when the people in my book, I've got a lot of subjects in there, and I where they lived, I would find a trainer who got it. And there aren't that many, as you know, there's different kinds of trainers, just
Yeah.
like there's different kind of lawyers.
Yeah.
But the right trainer can make a world of difference because the right trainer will push you and motivate you in a way that a starting person won't motivate themselves.
Yeah. And then the other side of it is not all trainers know how to train someone who's over 40 or over 60. And so finding someone who has some experience with that type of training, because you can't push your body exactly like you could when you were in your 20s. You need to understand how progression and rest and recovery and the different things are going to work for you, understanding any movement limitations you might have so that you can work through those and improve your overall body function to a point where you can safely and effectively do all of the exercises that you need.
So one of the things I've thought about is that I'm not a bricks and mortar guy. I'm selling an idea, but I've thought about what if guys like you and guys like a lot of the other top trainers I know on the country got together, and there'd be certified strong path trainers. So you could go to a gym and would be a 24-hour fitness, which is pretty good outfit generally, or Planet, and they say a strong path gym, and you go in and there'd be people there that at least had an idea of how to train older people, and you'd have a little booth there that would explain the strong path and stuff like that. Not to make money, but just to be sure people got started on the right direction.
Yeah, there is an organization called the Functional Aging Institute, and they do have a certification that you can get for dealing with individuals, and they do focus predominantly on individuals over 65 years old. So I do have that certification, and it's not a bad course, but they really are working to emphasize.
Can you email me? Can you email me that stuff real quick? Yeah.
Absolutely, we'll do.
Yeah.
And they're good. But I think they don't get into the emphasis of the strength training as much. They look at the movement issues that someone would have. So if someone has difficulty with balance, they're going to want to focus on that balance problem first. And if they have difficulty with leg strength, then they would definitely incorporate some strength. But they're not going to go to the level where you are of actually saying, let's address sarcopenia. Because that's really the problem. They're just looking at the functional issues that someone has and how can we improve that function. So it's very, very specific to the client.
I am, as you've no doubt read, I'm a big fan of FMAs, functional movement assessments.
Yes.
Functional movement assessment is done for all college athletes. I've gone around to exercise physiologists at Big Ten colleges, and it's like a 7 or 8 minute test that identifies the parts of your body that are weak. And these guys say every top athlete has parts of his body that are weak, or her body, and they focus on them. And it's sobering when you take the test and you realize that, I got to work a little harder on this.
Yeah. It is interesting. And that's part of, as I was getting into this fitness, regaining my fitness, similar to what happened in you, where you were actually discovered that you needed to do something because your wife mentioned it, and then you started doing it and seeing the benefits, and then now helping others. As I kind of got into my part of it, I realized, okay, I have some movement problems, and that's where I've spent a lot of my time studying, is on corrective exercise and functional movement, and how I can get my body moving better so I don't injure myself as I do this work. And so I do really find that fascinating. And again, I really like the fact that you're sitting there saying, hey, we want to get stronger than we were when we were 30, and 20. We want to get as strong as we can get and stay as strong as we can be throughout this, so that we can have the quality of life. I mean, you're able to go and not just ski the bunny hops, but actually go out there and truly enjoy a day of skiing without wrecking your body.
I had a ski day 2 weeks ago in Vail. It was cold as hell. 6, 7, or 8 inches of new snow. And as I was skiing it, I thought, this is one of the best 5 days of my entire life.
That's
Think
wonderful.
about that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And what's interesting is I deal, because of my business, I'm a trial lawyer, and I do a lot of litigation in medical fields. Most medical people think that at my age, going to be 86 soon, I can't get stronger. I don't cheat at solitaire. I don't cheat myself. At age 85, I'm on 86. I'm breaking lifetime strength records almost a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a month, because I'm going harder to failure. I don't cheat at solitaire. I don't rationalize missing a workout, that kind of thing. And it's I know it's not going to go on forever. I know that, but just the enjoyment of life I get out of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's really, I think that's a big part of why I wanted to have you on the show, is as I knew you would be this kind of guy that if this doesn't get someone motivated to start lifting weights and start working on this, then there's nothing I can do to help you. But before we go, there was one other topic in the book that I really wanted to get into. You don't spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's something important for someone to hear, because most of the time when someone is thinking health and wellness, they're thinking about weight loss, and they want to lose the weight really, really quickly. And some people really have some difficulty with the fact that when I tell them, well, we're going to lift some weights and you might actually gain weight, as you mentioned earlier, people will think you've lost weight, but you've actually gained weight. And I get a little bit of a pushback on it. And I tell them, I said, okay, if you were, and it's particularly like if I'm talking to a woman, I'll say this. If I'm talking to a man, I'll say it a different way. But I say to a woman, if you were 2 dress sizes smaller, how would you feel? And they say, I'd feel wonderful. And I says, well, what if you weighed the same?
That's good. I'll do that. Yeah.
And they're like, well, then maybe it wouldn't bother me as much. My weight wouldn't bother me as much, but I'd still want to lose weight. And I'm like, well, don't you just want to lose size, fat? And in the end, they actually can wrap their mind around it. But you give us one good caution for folks that want to lose weight while they're doing this stuff. And that is, go ahead.
Yeah. Peer-reviewed medical science, the average person my size, and this depends on your height and weight and everything, but if you lose more than 1.5 pounds a week, you're losing muscle tissue. You want to lose weight very, very slowly. And another thing I say to women, I've got this plan that can't fail. Buy yourself a digital scale. Weigh yourself in the morning, exact weight to the digit, then write with a dry erase marker on your mirror what your weight is. Within 2 or 3 weeks, you say, hey, I went up 1 pound yesterday. What'd I eat? Well, I didn't work out. I didn't do this. And you get a feeling for your body, and you teach yourself, move very slowly from one range of like 219 to 217 to 215, 213. Do that over 2 or 3 weeks, and you can control your weight exactly. Another thing I say to women all the time, in particular, they say, well, I don't want to be bulky. I said, you have no chance of being bulky. It's not going to happen. Can't happen. Yeah. Well, I don't want to be bulky. And there's a brand new study just came out yesterday, Alan. Think of this. This is good for women. The body type that is most admired now in a woman is no longer this, pipe stem arms, really skinny, no muscle. A new study all over the world, longitudinal study, the body type that is admired most by men and women is a lean, muscular woman, not a fat, curvy woman, but a lean, muscular woman, and certainly not a skinny woman. And finally, the research shows that over 70, it's better to be a little heavy than skinny for health and everything else.
Yeah, because again, with the weightlifting, with the strength training, what you're getting is you're getting a better muscle, you're getting better quality bones, and that's going to make you look and feel so much better. That you're not gonna end up being this frail individual that can't care for themselves. And you're going to be someone who can do the things you want to do longer and enjoy them and not be wrecked by them. So, Fred, it was so good to have you on the podcast. Your website is strongpath.com. Is there anywhere else that you'd like for me to send somebody to learn more about you and the book?
Well, we have, for people who are big on Facebook, you can search it. We have a lot of Facebook stuff. We have a lot of videos of talks I've given to different groups, and skiing and just regular folk stuff you have on Facebook. But we have an unusual website because we don't have any advertising, none. It's all the latest research, all broken down and explained, and then videos, of course, of how you get started and what form you should use in exercises and that stuff. So I've tried to give people everything I think will make them get interested, learn how to do things, but not a bunch of pop-up ads or anything like that. I'm running the whole thing on my own nickel. There's not an ad on there. There's not going to be.
Well, Fred, again, I really enjoy your passion for this. Enjoyed the book and all the case studies and the information you provide here. I'm sure the website is wonderful, and I encourage everybody to go out there and check that out. So again, thank you for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
And I'm glad to meet you and talk to you. Let's stay in touch. Who knows? You never know about things. You know more about this than 90% of the so-called 99% of the gurus do, and it's refreshing to talk to somebody who gets it.
Well, thank you, Fred.